Hello and welcome to the Championship Weekly. I don't know whether the intro came up for anybody. It didn't come up properly for us. We'll improve that in the future. But this is the first of a new era. You might remember us from the Football League Weekly, which was our previous show on Over the Bar. But we are back, and this time focusing on the greatest league in the world, the Sky Bet Championship. So we're not going to focus on all the results today. We're mostly going to do predictions. But how good is it to be back, Rhys?
Mate, I tell you what, it just feels right, don't it? You do something and you miss it. It's I think what people really didn't see when we were doing over the bar, when you got 72 teams, you know, trying to cover each of them in detail, trying to talk about them all in detail. You never know what the live chat's going to throw up. It really does give you so much work to try and do. So hopefully now that we've condensed our sort of workload, obviously over the bar has now turned into the Bundesliga show, which the guys are going to absolutely do wonders with. They're going to be absolutely amazing on that. And it narrows us down so we're in one league. And of course, if we don't go up, then we're going to, sorry, if we do get promoted, then we're going to have to change our logo, aren't we? That's just hit me as well.
Yeah, and again, like we are using slightly different software because the software that we're using looks a lot different than the last time we used it. But we missed talking to you a lot and we missed talking about the championship as well. So hopefully my microphone is working properly. Hopefully my sound is all crisp because we are going to be here every single week to talk about the championship, whether Ipswich are winning or not. So, okay, before we do go live, we always talk about the news. Let's quickly talk about Sheffield Wednesday because Chanziri is absolutely shitting the bed with Sheffield Wednesday. It is basically Chanziri that is stopping Sheffield Wednesday from being sold to an appropriate owner. So we are going to dig into that in a little bit of detail. But Rhys, ownership has been a huge topic of contention recently, especially with Morecambe and what they're going through. But Barry Bannon, he has signed a new contract for them. Players, I think, are more or less welcome to leave as they still, as far as we're aware, haven't been paid. So, how much of a shame is it to see them in this situation?
Honestly, it's ridiculous, isn't it? You talk about Sheffield Wednesday, and they're a massive club, aren't they? Even at championship level, they're a huge, huge club. You look back at their history, at their successes. You look at the FA Cup. You look at the games they've been involved in. It's a huge club, and for an owner to not do the basics, to not pay staff, to not pay players, to not cover expenses, to be cutting back so much as Chansiri has, it's murder. As far as I know, it's a huge word to use, especially in Morecambe's case. I think it's absolute murder. Jason Whitcomb's is a name that I don't really want to mention too much because people like him and Chansiri simply don't deserve the recognition. They don't deserve any sort of publicity from any of this. But it all comes back down, doesn't it? It all comes back down to one thing, and it's something that we mentioned so often last season. It comes back to the EFL fit and proper ownership test, doesn't it? You look at Jason Whittingham, he had a rugby side. Someone's going to correct me in a second. I think it was Warrington something. I'm not a rugby fan. I don't know if that came across really obvious, but he was in charge of someone, Warrington Wolves. That sounds about right, even though I've probably just clipped that up, so someone's going to laugh at me on Twitter later. But he took them to the brink of extinction, and I believe he actually killed the club there as well. And it's the same two people, Jason Whittingham and his absolute side clown, who have somehow passed the EFL fit and proper ownership test. How, I do not know. And they've got into this position and they're doing the exact same thing with Morecambe. You look at Chansiri, it's reported that he wants £100 million for Sheffield Wednesday. There isn't a club in this division. I don't care if you're ourselves, who obviously got a lot of backing at the moment under our American investment. You look at Birmingham City, Wrexham going to be a big club, I think, in the next couple of years. But there is no club in the Championship worth close to 100 million.
Yeah, and like 100 million is simply, like unattainable, in my opinion. Now, there have been talks that the players have been advised that they might be going, or they might be given a points deduction, which would be an absolute shame given the fact that the EFL haven't really offered them a bone as well. According to a horrible news outlet called The Sun, EFL chiefs will dock Sheffield Wednesday points for failing to pay their players on time. And the fact that this has happened 4 times means that they could risk a very significant points deduction. So, look, that is very unfair. Points deductions are always unfair. But do you feel as though, and this is me asking you a question from a position that is very ignorant in regards to EFL sanctions, do you reckon it's a little harsh for them to be deducting points?
Yeah, of course it is, 100%. I don't understand why a club should be punished with the threat of relegation elevated and more heightened because of an owner's mishap. It's not even a mishap, it's diabolical ownership. I never understand personally why the EFL or the Premier League, why they go for point deductions. I don't think it's fair to punish the fans, the players, the staff when it's not their fault. This comes down to one person, it comes down to one person only. There has been a lot of talk around the EFL and the sanctions that they could impose onto both Chansiri and Jason Whittingham. But how many more clubs are we going to lose before this is actually sorted out? We saw Bury Town, didn't we? You know, that they are the horrific example of what happens when football authorities don't step in. Yet we're seeing the exact same thing with Morecambe. We're seeing the exact same thing with Wednesday, and I'm pretty sure we're going to see the exact same thing with more and more clubs because it's strange, isn't it? Since the midpoint of last season, it's been a weird theme, hasn't it? More and more owners are going down the road of self-destruction. It's because if these owners had the club's best intentions at heart, they'd be selling up, wouldn't they? Because realistically, the price tag you'd put on Sheffield Wednesday right now, realistically, 20 to 30 million. I wouldn't be going much higher than that. The fact Chansiri wants 5 times that really goes to show the absolute man that he is, and it's not a man, is it? Jason Whittingham pulled out any of the Punjab Warriors who were due to take over Morecambe. Then he put the blame back onto the investment group. There's just no responsibility being held as by either party.
Yeah, and one final bit of news in regards to this, because there is one potential bidder for Sheffield Wednesday, and that is John Textor. Now, we all know what happened off the field at Lyon, and of course Crystal Palace as well, and how they got demoted to the Conference League because of absolutely abysmal ownership. Well, he has been linked to Sheffield Wednesday as a potential suitor. Now, according to The Guardian, I'm going to be reading verbatim here. One potential bidder is John Textor, this is The Guardian, but his recent off-field record at Lyon included substantial debts and a UEFA fine for a breach of financial sustainability requirements, makes many supporters uneasy. The American has been open about his desire to buy an English club and is keeping an eye on Wednesday after selling his shares in Crystal Palace. So, what do you make of that? Because, I haven't got anything positive to say about John Textor potentially taking over, but can you potentially offer me something a little more positive?
The only positive I can give you, mate, and it's a very slight one, is that the era of Chansiri is closer to its final chapter. That's really all I've got to offer you in terms of being positive. I have no more faith in John Textor than what I have in Chansiri, and that's really, I think, again, speaks volumes of what the men have done to their respective clubs. I think it's well with the EFL's fit and proper test. We all know it's lacking substance. We all know it's lacking any sort of style or any sort of format. Would John Textor get through that? Realistically, should he get through that after what's happened at Crystal Palace? He shouldn't be, but we all know that he will. The only thing that potentially could save Wednesday is that we are seeing now within the whole EFL, not just the Championship anymore, this theme of American ownership, aren't we? This theme of American investments. It's not as easy as just saying perhaps they're going to look at Wednesday, but they've got all the values within their club, haven't they, Sheffield Wednesday, that makes them an attractive proposition. You look at the fan base. Today we're recording this on the Sunday for the Leicester v Sheffield Wednesday game, just for context. And again, there was another protest, weren't there, at the King Power Stadium today, and an absolute credit to each and every one of those fans. But they've got the fan base behind them. They've got the ground. You've got players who want to play for the club. You've got an excellent captain and leader in Barry Bannon. There's so much to be positive about with this Sheffield Wednesday club. If you ignore Chansiri, yet we're in this scenario where we're talking about Sheffield Wednesday being nailed on relegation and playing League One football next year.
So let's move on to another news story. And this is an absolutely bizarre news story because more often than not, we don't normally talk about this topic. But Preston North End manager Paul Heckingbottom has criticised a personal trainer for an injury sustained to Daniel Jefferson. The Canadian forward on loan from Bournemouth missed the draw at QPR because of an ankle injury stemming from a private fitness session. When talking to the media, Paul Heckingbottom simply said, "I'm really angry about it. There's a growing trend of footballers to work with people from outside. It's an accident, I get it, but it's not happening anymore with any Preston players." So this isn't something we normally talk about. We don't usually talk about personal trainers kind of like causing injuries. Well, that isn't worded very well, but being the root cause behind injuries for players. Do you reckon Paul Heckingbottom has a point, or do you reckon it's a little ridiculous?
Well, you say you don't talk about personal trainers, mate, but I'm in great shape. This is a large, and it's only just fitting around my absolute massive physique. It's just no.
Have you actually got one?
No, this is a medium, and this is last season's shirt. Unfortunately,
well,
you
had to break it to us, didn't you?
Mate, I've got to where are we? I've got to wear that for. We don't know when we're going back up, do we? But
we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, I think he's talking as a man under pressure, isn't he? I know we're going to talk about Preston in a little bit more detail later on, but I think he's talking as a man under pressure. I think coming to this season, he's got to hit the ground running, hasn't he? Paul Heckingbottom at Preston. They've lost some big players. There's a lot of pressure now on Osmajic. Yes, okay, he did score in the first game week. I'm not a fan of Jensen either at the number 10. He's not a player for me that's going to be able to hit 10, 15 goal stroke assists contributions in the season. So it is a theme, isn't it? Where you look at Preston and you do worry about their attacking outlook. You do worry about them going forward, don't you? And it does feel like he is clutching at straws a little bit with this one.
Yeah, and I agree. It's just a ridiculous news story that, we have to throw out there. Once I get back into the swing of things, I'm sure I'll be playing ridiculous sound bites from his interviews and various things like that. But another reminder that the Championship is one of the craziest leagues in the world. So we are now going to go on to the predictions. What we're going to do is we are probably going to start analysing games on next week's show, so on the second episode. So if you are in the comments, feel free to let us know how your team did this game day, because we will still read it out, but we are going to do our predictions for this coming season. And as a reminder, one game early on in the Championship doesn't really mean too much, so we won't be looking into any losses, anything like that, because there have been plenty of surprise results that have happened this weekend. So what we are going to do, because Rhys, you have drawn out a more comprehensive predictions list than I have, because I've only done my top 6 and my bottom 3, but we are going to start off with our bottom 3. So Rhys, first of all, tell us the method behind how you have picked your predictions.
You know what? I spent so long, genuinely spent about a week chopping and changing. I've changed some again this morning. I spent so long tweaking it, thinking, okay, I've got this absolutely bang on. Chucked out on Twitter. got a load of abuse back, didn't I? Which I was quite
Of
surprised by. I
course.
genuinely think I've got this absolutely bang on. And I'm not one to normally sort of blow me own trumpet or any of this. But I think I know we do say it as football analysts or as content creators or dare I say influencers. Hate that phrase. Absolutely hate that phrase. We just ramble on YouTube and Twitter and Facebook and hope that people like it and watch us. That's all really we're doing here. But yeah, it is tough. It's tough to predict, especially for me. I struggle the most in the bottom three because I think there's genuinely six teams who are in serious danger of going down, and I'm only really confident on one. And I think everyone can really have a guess at who that one is. So really, there's five teams for two relegation spots, and it's been incredibly tight. But what I will say is between all of my bottom six, there is one underlying theme. There isn't enough quality in that final third. And that's what's going to cause the undoing. Because even when you look at the top end of this division, there's a lot of teams now with really, really good championship squads, really good ownerships, really good managers, and trying to divide those stuff. Even in the middle of the table, you got so many teams who are going to be there or thereabouts. There wasn't a method to this, mate. It was just throwing stuff around on my phone all night, thinking that looks good, that looks all right, and I've come to this conclusion.
You see, I think the bottom three this season looks quite predictable because there have been teams, and I'm not going to mention any teams as that might spoil my predictions for the bottom three, but there are certain teams for the last season or two that have been getting progressively worse and worse. And somehow these teams have miraculously survived relegation. And this season, given the quality of some of the teams going down and the fact that we have the likes of Wrexham and Birmingham who have had significant investment coming up, it's looking very likely that these teams are going to go down. So let's quickly, because I assume we're both going to agree on 24th, but who do you have finishing? And if you are watching live at the moment, whether it's on YouTube, we're not on YouTube this week because we're trying to get a new channel, so we'll be on YouTube next week, but whether you're watching on Twitter or on Facebook, give us your predictions as well and tell us whether you agree with us. But again, 24th, who do you have for 24th?
24th, unfortunately, it was the one pick that I probably haven't moved at all, and it is Sheffield Wednesday. I just think they're a club in so much mess there. I think they're in dire straits. They're a club that, let's be honest, I think deserve huge credit for even being able to put out a starting 11 against Leicester this afternoon. I think there was a point in the summer, wasn't there, where even that looked under serious jeopardy. I know we've touched on Chansiri already, but realistically, is there actually any positives coming from this season for Wednesday? Even Barry Bannon's got himself sent off against Leicester, 2 yellow cards. Ideas on Twitter, that seems harsh. But then again, everyone's going to say that, aren't they? When it's 2 yellow cards, everyone is going to come to that conclusion. For me, there just isn't any positives about the Sheffield Wednesday season. You got players handing in their notices. You got friendlies that were cancelled because the players went on strike. This will probably go down as the most disastrous sort of period of time in the club's history in this division. Simply because I can't remember another club going this much through the ringers, this many punches against them, to the fact that I'm sat here thinking one or two injuries to this team, and they're not going to field a full bench, are they? Chalobah went down with a hamstring injury earlier today. We hope that isn't too serious. But I think they had something like 4 or 5 teenagers on the bench who hadn't made a senior appearance for the club yet, and that was just today. So realistically, in a competitive division, I just can't see a way that Wednesday stay up.
Yeah, and look, I absolutely agree with you. Henrik Pedersen is a relatively unproven manager. He did, and I know this isn't necessarily worth anything, but he did leave his last club, Strongstad, however you pronounce that, after allegations arose that he made racist remarks during his time at the club. Now, he's probably learned his lesson, but I assume that Pedersen wasn't at the top of the list for managers they could hire. He was simply the easiest option that Chansiri could bring in. But if you look at their squad at the moment. They have Ingleson, who probably regrets signing a contract at the club last season. Nathaniel Chalobah, who's a really good player. I wouldn't be surprised if he had any suitors at all. Dominic Iorfa at the back, who in my opinion is probably not up to standards at the moment. Otto Bayo, who's a very young player. He made a couple of appearances last season and looks really solid. But again, he's a young player through their youth academy. And a bunch of other young players who have yet to really make any senior appearances. So it should be a really interesting time for Sheffield Wednesday. So I have them in a very similar position. But let's go on to 23rd. Who do you have in 23rd?
I had to have at some point, didn't I? Got myself on mute and then trying to talk. I had to get the first one in, mate, didn't I? I had to get the first one in. Look, for me, 23rd is as soon as the sort of big sort of controversy really started, if you like. But before I do reveal who it is, I should say that this really could be one of 5 different teams. It really could be. It's going to be extremely tight. I've gone Hull City. in 23rd. Yeah, I know. To be honest, I was expecting that reaction, to be honest with you. I know that's going to be something that I know in 9 months' time is going to get clipped up and it's going to get put on the rounds on Twitter, and I'm going to be made to have egg on my face. Everyone's going to laugh. I genuinely think they're in serious trouble. I think you look at the ownership, the CEO, the conflict that happened there. You look at the poor managerial decisions that have happened. Let's not forget the off-the-field issues that they've had as well. They've not been able to appoint really managers who I think have actually been up to standard. I'm not convinced as well at present. I do like the signing of John Lundstrom in central midfield, and that's not just because of his links to Rangers. I think he adds invaluable experience into that dressing room, as well as some fantastic easy picks for yellow cards for all you people who like to bet out there. He's going to be a surefire for that. But even last season, you look at Hull City, you look at the fact that they only stayed up last year on goal difference. They were the lowest scorers within the Championship last season. And then you think, okay, how have they addressed this within this transfer window? They kind of haven't. If I'm being perfectly honest, and Hull fans, please tell me how wrong I am, because I love having some back and forth. I love debating. I don't think you've actually addressed it within this window. You haven't really brought in an out-and-out number 9 and someone's going to be creative. Okay, you got Joel and Dala out on that left wing you brought in. Again, is he the answer to the problems? Probably not. Semi Ajayi, centre half, really big fan of him. He's going to come in and perform really high standards, I think. But it's that theme. There's not enough penetration in that final third for Hull. Last season was so blunt. It was like really a wooden spoon in attack at times for Hull. 2 different managers throughout this sort of period of time, and neither one has got them scoring. I just can't see Hull staying up.
Yeah, and it's interesting because obviously they had that transfer embargo for a little while. It's when Ollie McBurney came into the club, it was absolutely fascinating reading kind of like the media's reaction to it, and kind of like Ollie McBurney kind of like explaining why he came to the club. He said he came to the club because he didn't want to go to a club that were going to languish in mid-table. Well, that is a fascinating choice because, Hull at the moment are in a precarious position, and they're one of those clubs at the moment who could either go on to have a really good season or who could really struggle. Like, they do have plenty of players who I do rate. They have Cody Drammer, who we all remember a couple of seasons ago was a part of the playoff winning squad with Luton Town. They have Akin Fanway, who recently joined from Sheffield Wednesday as well, who is a really good signing as well. They have Semi Ajayi, who's still a really good signing. Ollie McBurney, who we all saw the scrap that he got into yesterday against QPR. He's still a relatively good player. He was linked to Ipswich Town as well. And the likes of James Furlong, Casey Palmer as well. The list goes on and on of players who are actually quite good who play for Hull City. But again, we all remember what happened last season. I don't necessarily rate their ownership because of the amount of managers they've seemed to have been getting through in the last couple of years. I just don't think that Akon Media, whose name I've absolutely butchered, I simply don't think he's footballing man. And we do have a lot of managers or owners who've come into the EFL in particular who think they can simply take over at a club and do well there. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. Chanzeri put a lot of money into Sheffield Wednesday before he got bored into it. And I'm a little worried that Hull's, I'm just going to refer to him as Hull's Turkish owner. I'm a little worried that Hull's Turkish owner is going to go down a very similar route here. Because their manager at the moment, and I hate the fact that they have really complicated names, Sergei Jakirovic, whose name I'm sure I've absolutely butchered. Like he hasn't necessarily got a brilliant CV. Like he did win the Bosnian Premier League back in 21-22. He did win the Croatian Football League back in 23-24 with Dynamo Zagreb. But that doesn't really amount to anything in the championship. And we've seen really successful managers from abroad try and go into the championship before and fail. So I am a little worried about them. But I personally don't have them in kind of like my bottom three, if you will. A team that I do have in 23rd is actually Preston North End. Now, they narrowly avoided relegation last season, finishing 20th. They were absolutely abysmal, in my opinion. They have had some key turnovers as well. Freddie Woodman going to Liverpool, and Neil Rhys going to Bristol City as well, and midfielder Ryan Ledson surprising some fans by going to Huddersfield. When I look at some of the players they've signed, I simply think that they're in a little bit of danger. Alfie Devine is a very decent signing, in my opinion, from Tottenham Hotspur, but Daniel Jemison is already injured, so they're going to have to go in and potentially get another striker after that. And let's not forget, Jemison wasn't that good when he played for Watford, and when Bournemouth kind of like recalled him from loan from Watford last season, he didn't do that well for Bournemouth as well. He's not that popular there. So there's a massive question mark, in my opinion, over some of their signings. And I reckon they're one of those clubs who, and I said a little while ago that there are a number of clubs, maybe 6 clubs, who have been getting progressively worse and worse. I might be approaching this from a very ignorant standpoint here. So if you are a Preston fan, then let me know in the comments whether I am approaching this with said ignorant standpoint. But Preston are a team who are getting progressively worse and worse, and we've seen that with some of their transfers that have been coming in. The fact that they've let go of some important players, in my opinion, especially in the dressing room. I'm fascinated to see where they end up this season because it is going to be very interesting. And Paul Heckingbottom has been quite outspoken about some of the transfer business that they've been given. Opta have given them a 19.6% chance of relegation alongside Stoke City amid concerns they could repeat last season's struggles. So yeah, unless there's a heavy upheaval with quality players, I am quite concerned. But let's go to 22nd. Who do you have finishing in 22nd?
I've got a feeling this is going to upset more fans. I will just reiterate, just before I say this, I will just reiterate that I did say right at the top of this that there are 5 teams who are going to be very, very tight within this 22nd. I've got Oxford United. Again, you look at last season. Oh, mate, don't do that to me. Oh, don't do that to me.
It's interesting. It's interesting.
Oh, you know what? I got to a point where I was really happy. And seeing your reactions to Hull and Oxford, and that got me thinking, oh, should I have tracked Preston? Because I've got Preston surviving. I've not got them doing anything stupid like mid-table or anything. I've got Preston surviving. Oxford are going down. Last season again, unbelievably goal shy. I look at the final third again during the summer. They haven't improved it. I had a little bit of a back and forth with an Oxford fan. It was in DMs. We had a little conversation about Oxford. And you were saying, yeah, but we brought in 2 strikers. Yes, but look at what they actually bring to you. I look at Lancashire, the loanee from Tottenham, I want to say. He's coming on loan from Tottenham, hasn't really made an impact in senior football yet. He's only 20 years old. Reminds me a bit of Dane Scarlett when he was with us, when he came on loan to us. Very, very raw, yet to make an impact in senior football. Is he going to be the striker to sort of push this Oxford side out this bottom three? No, he isn't. He simply isn't. And then I look at the other striker they've brought in, Prelic, Prelic, come over from Austria, playing in the Austrian Bundesliga last season. Only scored 6 goals last season. Season before, only found the back of their net. I think it was twice. I think the season before. So he's only actually scored 8 goals in 2 seasons, and these are the 2 strikers that you've brought in to improve an attack that was goal shy anyway. They're not coming in with any quality. I do like the signing of Luke Harris, but again, when you look at the actual additions that Oxford have made, they're not improving this squad. And then I'll reveal the teams in a little while who have got just surviving. When I look at those teams and I compare their business to Oxford, I think they've had much, much better transfer windows. Like I say, Lancashire isn't going to be anywhere near his sort of prime, if you like, for a good 5-6 seasons realistically before he's banging in 20 goals a season. He's nowhere near that at this moment in time. Prelic has only come off the back of scoring 6 times in the Austrian Bundesliga, so he's not going to be the main man to rely on for Oxford United. I just don't see where the goals are coming from. What I will say is when the ice cream van does go past, I don't know if you guys can hear that or not. This is how you know it's summer, isn't it? It's like
Treat yourself
degrees.
to an ice cream. Go out there.
Shall I go
I'll
and
yap
run?
to the camera. Go on, run. Get a cornet.
Mate, that'd be a scene. That'd be what I would say about Oxford is that I do like to sign the Brodie Spencer at right back. I'm a big fan of Brodie Spencer at right back. I do think he's solid, but I think going forward, I struggle to see where the goals are coming from this season.
Now, Rhys, the reason I was smiling is because I agree with you. They were a side that I had in 22nd as well. And again, I think you've done most of the analysis, but their pre-season tour of Indonesia was mixed. So, okay, they're basically in a cup called the President's Cup, which is some sort of like sponsorship cup that they are in. And they lost the final to Thai side Port FC, which I don't necessarily think is a brilliant look as well. So they've also won a few games in pre-seasons against Malaga. But in my opinion, if you look at their side at the moment, early indicators suggest that they are going to have a challenging season. And I reckon they're going to have a very challenging start as well. I know we're only 1 game into this season, but if we look at some of their signings as well, Brian the Keersmaker, he's a decent signing. I reckon he'll do quite well. But Will Lancashire, as you quite rightly mentioned, I can see him being a very similar signing to Dane Scarlett when he was at Ipswich. They've lost some pretty decent players as well, including Ruben Rodriguez to Victoria. I know he wasn't making as much of an impact last season as he had made in previous seasons, but he's still a player that they've kind of like lost as well. I know a lot of fans are cautiously optimistic. Now, I was scrolling through Twitter and I've got a couple of quotes right here. One fan said that they are good enough to stay up easily by 5 to 6 points, but another fan said that they are devoid of any attacking threats and less solid than last season, calling themselves relegation contenders. So again, I'm very aware that I'm simply looking at this as an outsider. So again, my opinions are never quite as detailed as yours, Rhys. So again, this could easily be a very ignorant take. So feel free to click this come the end of the season. But I'm simply a little bit worried for them, simply because of the strength of their squad. And again, there are 3 or 4 more teams who could potentially be in a worse predicament than they are. So I'm very aware of that. But if you are an Oxford fan and you are listening at the moment, take this opinion as the host of a footballing podcast who doesn't necessarily do the analysis on the footballing podcast. That is Rhys's kind of like role on the show, if you will. Don't come at me if you survive. See, I think I'm being pretty kind there, aren't I, Rhys?
Yeah, but now you've got them to come to me now.
No, okay, come to me or simply go to our DMs, the Championship Weekly on Twitter, and we'll get back to you in 4 or 5 business days, maybe. Who knows? But let's perhaps be a little more positive. Let's talk about the top 6 in the league. Let's go to 6th place because I'll reveal who I have in the 6th place in a minute. And again, let us know your bottom 3 if you are watching on Twitter. There is an option to talk on Twitter. I think you simply click the stream and it should take you to another page where you can get involved. I might be wrong here. I know those are very vague instructions, but who do you have in 6th?
In 6th, I've gone for Leicester City. And I think that's a fair assumption, I think. I think when you look at a team who've just come down from Premier League, like what Leicester have, to put them into 6th would be something that would raise a few eyebrows, but I think it actually works for Leicester. I think when you look at the impending points deduction, we're unsure to know how big that's going to be at this stage. It could just be 3 points for all we know. It could be 10, 15 points. We just, at this moment in time, we just don't know what that point deduction is going to be. And that's why I've got this big question mark over Leicester. I do like their squad. I really like Fataru and Mavadidi on the other wing. I mean, they complement each other's game super well. I think they're both direct. They got pace, and they're going to cause problems for every single defense within this division. You know, I do think they're that good. You look at Oliver Skip in central midfield. Okay, he was very unlucky today with a deflection for the Chalobah goal for Wednesday. He sort of put his body on the line and takes some huge deflection off him and end up in the back of the net. Very, very unlucky. But I look at this Leicester team and there's just so much quality. It's oozing quality. Without this points deduction, they probably get into my top 3, maybe even sneak into that top 2. I even look at Jordan Ayew, who I think has got a huge amount of pressure on his shoulders this season. With the departure of Jamie Vardy, he's taken the number 9 shirt. He's got all the weight of that on his shoulders now for this season. But even he, I think he's too good for this division. I think Leicester are caught in that sort of weird position, aren't they, where they are, as far as I'm concerned, too good to be playing Championship football, but they're not quite there in terms of having that Premier League ready squad or the Premier League squad required to finish 17th at least, you know. And I think there are a few clubs, arguably 4 of my top 6 are also within that same sort of predicament. So realistically, I do think 6th is a good season for Leicester.
And what do you make of Marty Cifuentes? Because I'll be talking about Leicester in a little bit as well. But he was on gardening leave for a long time at Queen's Park Rangers. He allowed them to perhaps punch above their weights a little bit in the Championship. But do you reckon he's, I don't want to say deserving, but do you reckon he's a good signing, a good appointment for them?
See, it's tough, isn't it? It's really, really difficult. And I'm not going to judge this based on today's game. So I think judging managerial appointments or new managerial appointments after one game is simply bonkers. We wouldn't do that, would we? Sheffield United, if you've seen the clip, you know what I mean. We certainly wouldn't be judging managers after one game. I do think if you think back to when Marty Cifuentes was first in charge at QPR, and he did get them playing really good football. He got them punching above their weight. He got them pushing up the league. So if he can bring that side to Leicester City, I think they're going to be absolutely fine. I was watching before we went live. I watched the first half of the Leicester v Wednesday game, and a lot of the build-up towards it was about Marty Cifuentes and how he's inherited this Premier League squad and how easy it's going to be for him to take a squad up. I don't think it is. Despite the quality that this squad's got, I don't think any managerial job is easy. You look at, I know it's a mad comparison to make, but you look at Manchester City. Man City last season, you say they're the best team in the world. Couldn't win the Premier League. I don't think it's as easy as just saying this is a squad that's going to get top 6. This is a squad that's going to do this. So for me, it all depends what side of Marty Cifuentes we're going to get. If we get the side where he can go in, bring the momentum like he did with QPR, absolutely right appointment. But how long do we give Cifuentes before we judge him, and how much consideration do we take in with the point deduction as well?
So I have in sixth place West Brom. Now, I think Ryan Mason is an absolutely brilliant appointment. I think everybody remembers kind of like the 10 years that he had as interim boss at Tottenham Hotspur. And I thought he did quite well there, kind of like considering where they were at. He got them, I think he finished in the Champions League places with them as well. And I think the squad that West Brom have, he's simply a very good appointment. I am going to cheat a little bit and also judge this based, if I'm allowed, Rhys, based off their game against Blackburn yesterday. Am I breaking the rules a little bit by doing that?
Now go for it, mate. Go for it.
So I was really impressed with them, and this wasn't as good as I know they can play, because I know that West Brom, given some of the players that they have got, can play a lot better. But I was really impressed by a couple of their players. Nat Phillips looks like an absolute coup of a signing. They've actually, I think they've bought him for around 3.5 million. I might be wrong there, but he is an absolute coup of a player to sign. He's 28 years old. He won 11 duels yesterday and made 13 outstanding clearances as well. And I normally think back to when he was kind of like a stand-in centre back at Liverpool, replacing Joel Matip when he got injured. They had another player at centre back who got injured. He was also kind of like replaced with another young player whose name has completely kind of like exited my mind. But he's got that top flight experience Nat Phillips has. And I reckon he's kind of like had it tough in the last couple of seasons because he's never really been given the opportunity to show how good a player he really is. He hasn't really got that one, or had that one move to a side that has really allowed him to test himself. Last season he was on loan at Derby County. The season before at Cardiff City. With all due respect, at that point in time, especially for Derby County, before they had their takeover and before John Eustace came, they were very much a side who were languishing towards the bottom end of the table. So I think this is a brilliant move for both parties, a brilliant move for Nat Phillips, and I reckon, like he's going to be a real asset for them as well. I'm also very hopeful, and this could be a very ignorant statement for me to make, given how West Brom fans are crying out for a new goalkeeper. I thought their goalkeeper, Josh Griffiths, played really well yesterday. And I know they still want to sign a new goalkeeper after Alex Palmer's departure, but I reckon they should stick with Griffiths and see how he does, because he really impressed me yesterday. He was very, very solid in goal, and I'm very hopeful with kind of like how he can do. And again, if you look at some of their players as well, just quickly going through their squad, Tom Fellows, he's always been linked to the upper end of the Championship. I know West Brom, I've put them in the upper end of the Championship, but he's been linked with a lot of clubs who are in or have been in a much fortunate position as of late. They have some really good players on the bench as well. Jed Wallace, Devante Cole as well. So yeah, I'm quite positive. But let's go to fifth, because I've rambled on about West Brom for quite a while. Who do you have in fifth?
See, in fifth, I'm not sure if this is a team who I think are going to get there more than a team who I think need to get there. And the reason why I say perhaps need to get there is the fact that if Coventry City don't get fifth place, if Coventry don't make playoffs this season, is there pressure on Frank Lampard? Personally, controversially, I think there is pressure on Frank Lampard if he doesn't get his team at least in the top six. Okay, they achieved playoffs last season, but fans are going to want to build on that now. You look at the squad that he's got at his disposal. You look at the likes of Sakamoto up top in the final third, absolutely fantastic player. Ben Sheaf, outstanding at the weekend. Mason Clark, Jack Rudoni. These are players that simply should be in a side at minimum fighting for this top six. And if this isn't achieved this season, I think there's huge pressure. I think it's huge pressure on Frank Lampard if they don't at least replicate what they done last season. I think they addressed their goalkeeping position. I think that was a position where they had to strengthen, and they brought in Carl Rushworth from Swansea, I believe, who was a very solid addition against Championship. Solid, I'd say it's probably just about enough. But for me, Coventry have to make playoffs. They have to go one step further for me now. They've been there or thereabouts. The playoffs are going to be extremely tough this season, but they've got to put themselves in the mix. They've got to be there, because if they're not there come February, I think Lampard's potentially looking at the P45.
Yeah, and look, Rushworth was linked to us, I think, last year, wasn't he? Like, he is a very good goalkeeper, so I think that is a very good pick. I'm going to go through mine real quickly because I'm not a big fan of the team, but I have Norwich City in fifth. Look, there's a little bit of pressure on Liam Manning to perhaps do a little bit better than Oforup did last season. He is actually a former Ipswich youth player. He did quite well at Bristol City last season, getting them into the playoffs. But I am simply quite impressed with some of the players that they've signed in this transfer window. Mirko Topic, who is a young 22-year-old, Jeffrey Schlupp as well, who has got bags of experience, was on loan, I believe, at Celtic last season. Papa Amadou Diallo as well, who could potentially be an absolutely brilliant signing for them. He was is a very highly rated player, a brilliant player at Metz as well. He has League 1 experience too, making 16 appearances in League 1 in the 23-24 season. I reckon he could be a real asset for them, and Josh Sargent is still there as well. So I am really impressed by how some of their signings have looked and by how their squad looks as well. Look, they've lost the likes of Borja Signs. I think that was to be expected. I don't think anybody is too kind of like upset or surprised by that. But I'm really hopeful ahead of this season by how they're going to do. I think, and again, I hope we beat them in the East Anglian derby, but I think some of their players, some of their signings have been absolutely brilliant. Daniel Grimshaw, when he was at Plymouth Argyle, especially last season, was one of their few bright sparks, so he could be absolutely brilliant in goal as well for Norwich, especially since they've let go of Angus Gunn. That's it. His name escapes my head. So yeah, I'm actually really hopeful. And again, like the reason I am biting my tongue for saying this is because of the shirt that I'm wearing right now. But putting kind of like my equal hat on, my fair hat on, I reckon they're going to have an absolutely brilliant season. So let's go on to fourth. I believe we're on now. Who do you have in fourth?
In fourth place, I've gone Birmingham City. I think that's as optimistic as I'm going to be. I've seen people put Birmingham into the top two. I can't see it. I think they've recruited extremely, extremely smartly this window. Kyogo, what an absolute baller of a player he is. The two midfielders started Friday night. Pike, that's awful pronunciation. We're not known for pronunciation on this show. We weren't known for over the bar. But
that's why my analysis is so awful.
the two midfielders of Pike and whoever he was beside him absolutely complemented each other to a T. Really nullified Ipswich in the midfield really well. That midfield battle, it was tenacious. The pressure was there. The atmosphere was there. The occasion at St Andrews. You don't keep that going. I think they're going to surprise a lot of teams this season, Birmingham. But they've also got that sort of core squad as well. I'm a big fan of Jay Stansfield. I think he is going to come. He's going to come good eventually. Maybe he isn't quite there yet. But when you've got players, when you bring in the likes of Kyogo, when you've got this American investment, that's so obvious as well. You've got Damari Gray on the left as well. What an absolute signing that is. I've got to mention Clara and Newman at the back. Newman's coming up, I believe, wasn't like a free transfer or something, or minimal transfer fee anyway. It's like a pre-contract, wasn't it? Something to do with pre-contract. They got him on a pre-contract deal. What an absolute steal that is. Based on, I know it's one game and I'm not going to get carried away, but based on what I saw from Friday night, they didn't pay 10, 15, 20 million pounds for that defender is ridiculous. To get a player of that quality for free, and how he complements Clara as well, that's a really solid. That too is potentially the best centre back partnership in the division. So I've got Birmingham doing some high things. I know there's going to be people who are going to be salty simply because of the investment, and people don't like the fact they're buying their way up the leagues. But they're not just throwing money at the wall; they're bringing in real quality. Who'd have thought they bought in Kyogo? I know because of links I've got to Rangers, I really shouldn't be praising Kyogo. And you look at his goal that was ruled out. Ignore the bias on my shirt. Probably is the right decision based on the game. Before anyone comes at me on the decision of the game, it probably is the right decision to disallow the goal. Simply because he jumps into the back of Greaves, doesn't he? I think if he doesn't do that and allows Greaves to remain balanced, I think it's a goal. There isn't anything in it. It's a fact he jumps into the back of Greaves that, for me, he makes him unbalanced. And I can see why the referee's given it. But take nothing away from that finish, though. It was an expertly crafted lob, wasn't it? And I'll be surprised if Birmingham finish any less than fourth, mate. I'll be shocked.
Yeah, and I have them fourth Leicester City. I'm not as optimistic as some fans are of them. I think Fuentes is going to be in for a little bit of surprise because I simply reckon they have a squad that have really stagnated. They've lost Wilfred and Didi, which was to be expected in my opinion. They've lost their goalkeeper to West Ham as well. I know that Asmir Begovic has come in potentially as a backup. But I've never been a big fan of Wout Faes, who is still their centre back at championship level. He is absolutely fun, in my opinion. He can do a job, but I simply don't think he is really a player who's going to get you anywhere at the back long term. They have, again, decent players in Oliver Skip and Harry Winks, but again, these are players who haven't really got anybody in behind them. They haven't necessarily got any backup to them. So I'm simply worried about them this season because I simply think they have a squad who are stagnating, a squad who really kind of like needs a little bit of refreshment as well. Like, are you up front? Again, he's been a decent servant. He is still a very decent player for them, but I think for the championship, really, you should be prioritizing perhaps players who are a little bit younger. I was reading the wrong team rights there, but yeah, are you? They played Are you up front, didn't they? And I simply think that he's a player who is a little bit kind of like past it now. He's mid 30s, 33 years old. They need a young striker as well. And when I look at some of the players that they have on the bench as well, Patson Daka, I remember Patson Daka a couple of seasons ago having a really good kind of like campaign in the Europa League. But since then, he hasn't really done much for them. He's been a very bang average player for them, only scoring one goal last season, and that was in 23 appearances for them, which is absolutely abysmal in my opinion. So this is a squad coming off the back of a very difficult season in the Premier League. They do need, in my opinion, a lot of reinforcement because, again, they do have players who had a poor season last year, and I don't think their defence is that good either. So, again, Leicester fans, don't kill me. This is, again, coming from an Ipswich fan right here, but I can see you potentially finishing fourth, going on to win the playoffs, but I do think that you need a couple of new signings. So I'm going to make a real quick transition. I am going to nip off for 2 seconds. Before you go off, I need to hear who you have in third because I do want to hear it just so I am in the loop when I do come back. Who do you have in third place?
In third, I have Sheffield United. I've passed top two. So I've gone Sheffield United to finish third. I think there is a little bit of it's strange, isn't it? I think it's a little bit of Negativity, I suppose, since Chris Wilder left the football club, there are question marks over Ruben Sayers as coach. You look at the performance within the first game week. I mean, who would have seen a 4-1 defeat to Bristol City being on the cards? Realistically, if you're going to bet anything on that game, you would have expected the Sheffield United win, wouldn't you? And that's why we really can't take too much away from the first game week. You're going to have these surprise results, What I would say, something I am a little bit worried about when it comes to Sheffield United, and perhaps the reason they're not in my top two, is them defensively. I look at the loss of Ahmed Hodzig. That's an awful pronunciation, but I'm rolling with it. Don't judge me. And I look at the departure of Ahmed Hodzig. He's gone to his team in Europe, wasn't he? He's gone for European football now. And I do fear not only have they lost a fantastic centre half, they've also lost a leader. They've lost someone who sets standards. And you look at some of the goals that Sheffield United did concede yesterday, and it's poor, isn't it? Too much space for Scott Twine's, not the free kick, but the second goal that Scott Twine scored. He's had too much space just inside the penalty area. Not saying that Ahmed Hodzig would have been able to prevent that himself, but these worries do creep in when it comes towards the blades. But being positive, Ruben Sayers comes in, really, really exciting head coach. Big shoes to fill in terms of Chris Wilder's departure. But you look at this squad, and for me, it just screams Premier League quality. You look at even Sam McCullum, I think, is a great up-and-coming left back. You look at Callum O'Hare, attacking midfield. You look at Tom Cannon. They brought in the likes of my mind's gone blank. I can't think. Louis Barry and Tyler Biden, who are absolutely fantastic additions to an already strong squad. You look at Gustavo Harmer, how he hasn't got a Premier League move yet from Sheffield United, to me is madness. He's too much of a good player, I think, to be playing in the Championship. So yeah, Sheffield United have gone third for me. It would be, I would put them higher, but like I said, the departure of Ahmed Hodzig worries me a little bit.
And in third place, I've got Birmingham City, which is a little rich of me to say, really, because I don't think they're going to do as well as perhaps many people think they would do. But again, simply when going through my top six, I can't think of another team with as much momentum as they have at the moment. And they've got so much momentum. Watching them on Friday night, I was so impressed with a couple of players. Kyogo, that kind of like lob over the goalkeeper should really have counted. It was an absolutely brilliant goal. Iwata in midfield, he had that tenacity that you really, really need at this level. And alongside Paik, whose name I've probably butchered, they did an absolutely brilliant job at kind of like closing down space, absolutely like pressing the hell out of Ipswich. And when you have a midfield capable of doing that, when you have a midfield who will run their legs off, who will give you their all like they can, then like you are going to be in for a very good season, because they also offer a lot of service from midfield as well. So a shout out to their midfield, because I reckon, in my opinion, they have one of the best midfields in the Championship. I do think that Clara and Newman as well at the back are solid defenders. I thought I had initial reservations about Bright Asai Samuel, because he's typically a winger. He isn't a fullback / wingback. But I thought he performed really well there the other night, and he was an absolute nightmare as well. So I think they have an absolutely brilliant squad as well. I don't know, Allsop played in goal the other day, and his passing was absolutely tremendous. But they have James Beadle as a backup. James Beadle is an absolutely brilliant young goalkeeper. Did absolute bits for Sheffield Wednesday when he was on loan at their club. So I'm really impressed by some of the players that they've got. They've got a little bit of depth. Perhaps they need a few more reinforcements, but they've got Tommy Doyle as well, who is an absolutely brilliant central midfielder. I'm really surprised that Wolves haven't kept him in and around their first team because he made 24 appearances for them last season. He was a semi-regular player, and I thought he did fairly well for a side that were initially struggling. So they've got a Premier League quality midfielder as well, alongside two midfielders who I just noted, who are, in my opinion, amongst the best in the league. So I am very hopeful. They have Jay Stansfield as well, but perhaps this is just my Ipswich bias coming into play here. But I do worry that they're perhaps being a little ahead of themselves. They've had all this amazing publicity from their Amazon Prime documentary, their links with Tom Brady, their amazing ownership. I just worry that should something go wrong for them, should they have back-to-back defeats or something like that, that their heads might go a little, that they might not know how to deal with that predicament because they're so used to winning. They had such a brilliant season last year, hitting 100 points, etc. It'd be fascinating to see what will happen this season should they kind of like go through a difficult run. We saw how their fans reacted when George Hurst scored the other night. So yeah, just a couple of things to throw out there, but I do rate this Birmingham squad. I think they're very, very strong, especially in their midfield, as I've kept saying. And Chris Davies as well. He's very much kind of like in the Kieran McKenna mold, a young coach who was previously assistant manager to Ange Postecoglou at Tottenham Hotspur. Let's not forget he was also a youth coach as well at Leicester City. So I could rattle on for ages about Birmingham City and how much I like them. But let's pick up the pace a little. Second place, who do you have in second?
I don't want people to start assuming that this is my bias taking over, because this top two, even now, I'm still thinking it. I still cannot confidently pick who's second, because I think both these top two are capable of winning the division. Second place, I've gone Southampton. Second place, Southampton. It's out there now. It's done. I'm a huge fan of this Southampton side. I'll talk about the squad in a second, but even the performance yesterday against Wrexham. Wrexham went into that game at St Mary's and really made it tough. That first half, the Saints struggled, and you could understand why. You know, this was a team who, on the back of huge momentum, but what really impressed me was how resilient they were. How what's the word? How defensively sensible. I know that's a really weird term to use, and someone's screaming at the TV or their phone right now saying it's this word. But they were so organised. They were so resilient. They were so able to sort of just soak that pressure up. They weren't conceding loads and loads of chances in that first half. They kept Wrexham at bay to a degree. And in the second half, they really started to grow into that game. They really started to take the fight to Wrexham. They started to have more and more of the possession. They started to dominate more. They started to ask questions. And that's a Southampton that we have to keep on seeing. If I can finish in this top two, I want to see that second half performance from Southampton transpire into a full 90 minutes. I'm a huge fan of Will Still. We all know the amazing work that he was doing over in France. I'm sure the majority of us watching this, I'm sure you have, Ben, have seen his little sort of exclusive thing on Sky where we talk about his tactics. How naive. But, you know, I wasn't a fan of that. Let's just say that. But the amount of detail he goes into, how he is everything. There's no stone left unturned when it comes to Will Still. And you look at this squad, it's ridiculous, isn't it? It's absolutely next level. Bazunu in goal, absolutely fantastic keeper. Ryan Fraser, who I'm always going to bang the drum for. I wonder why. You look at Flynn Downs. Oh, what a theme. Jack Stevens at the back is an incredible centre half. Adam Armstrong up top, absolutely solid. The only thing that worries me about Southampton is the potential for both Mateus Fernandes and the other one, Ryan Manning, both to be potentially departing the club. So I do think that when Mateus Fernandes came on, he really changed the game. He took that game by the scruff of the neck and he dragged his team back into it. So I do fear that should they lose both Manning and Fernandes, that there may be a drop-off from Southampton. But I still think this squad overall is still too strong not to finish in the top two.
So, real quickly before I give you who I have in second place, if you are watching live on Twitter at the moment, we still call it Twitter. Then, if you want to get involved in the live chat, there is a little tab down below that says Championship Weekly Podcast, and then you kind of like the description. Click on that, as that will kind of like take you to a separate page where there will be a chat option. So I'm not great at giving instructions, but yeah, that is how you can get involved in the conversation and yeah, like join in basically. So again, I'm no brilliant IT guy. I'm more or less the IT guy at my workplace, but I'm never very good at explaining anything. So in second, I have Ipswich. This is the only kind of like bit on the show that I haven't had to look and read from my notes for because obviously, no surprise, we both support Ipswich. I'm a little worried, and my the method behind my madness for why I think we'll finish second and not first is because I'm still a little bit worried that we're a little too pragmatic against some of the better teams. Even back when we got promoted from the Championship 2 seasons ago, I remember that game against Southampton, the one where Sarmiento scored late on. The issue with that was that we were sitting back for the entire game. We weren't necessarily on the front foot, and we had a little bit of luck that won the game. And there were multiple opportunities last season where, against Brentford, like away from home at Brentford in a game that I think finished 4-3, I might be wrong, against Manchester United, where instead of going onto the front foot where we could easily have perhaps gotten a result, we were a little too pragmatic. There is something about Ipswich, especially last season, and I know I'm basing it on last season, where whenever we go in front, whenever we kind of like get into a position where we can hold out the game, where perhaps we can close the game, if you will, where we always just concede the goals, where there must be something with our mentality where our kind of like defense just kind of like collapses, our midfield just kind of like stops pressing, something happens, and I'm not too sure. So that is why I'm really worried about kind of like the potential for that to happen this season. We also need a couple of new players. I'd well like a new midfielder and perhaps a new striker. Chiba Akpom could potentially come in. But let's quickly talk about the positives as well. Kieran McKenna now has kind of like the distinct advantage where he knows the Premier League quite well. He knows the Championship very, very well. And he also has a group of players who have been there for a long time. A lot of them since the Championship, some of them since League One, in Connor Chaplin's case as well. And these are players who are very close to each other as well. And we aren't the type of club to bring in too many new players as well, apart from, like Mitasawa as well, who is a new midfielder for us. I'm simply quite impressed by how this squad is looking. And Ashley Young as well, who brings in a lot of experience that will hopefully replace Sam Morsey, who we shouldn't have let go, in my opinion, especially to FC Kuwait. Who the hell are they? I've never heard of them before. So yeah, I'm quietly optimistic. We do need a few more players, but I simply worry will have worries about our midfield. I know Jens Kjuste has come in as well, and midfield of Jens Kjuste and Mitasawa looks very good. But last season, Jens Kjuste perhaps lacked a little bit of cutting edge, his kind of like quality in the final third, and I know he is a midfielder, but his quality in the final third wasn't brilliant. But should they click together, this midfield could be amongst, again, the best in the Championship. Jacob Greaves and Dara O'Shea at the back are two absolutely quality centre-backs. Leif Davis probably won't be going, in my opinion, to Nottingham Forest as well. I do have doubts over Ben Johnson. I thought he struggled a little bit the other night. His set pieces were absolutely abysmal. Then we have Ashley Young to come in, who at 40 years old is still a player who played over 30 games for Everton last season. He is still quality. So perhaps I'm being a little bit trepidatious here, but we will have a good season. Without a doubt, I reckon we will. But I'm just a little bit worried. Maybe it's after the season that we had last year where we kept getting into really brilliant positions, only for those games to either end up in a draw or a loss. But we're in the championship now, so maybe we can afford to have those games. I think we're going on to first now, aren't we? Did I ask you for your second pick? I think you went to Southampton, didn't you?
Yeah, bang on, mate. Yeah, second Southampton. Yeah,
So first place, I see you. You have Ipswich, maybe, unless you're going to
no,
surprise every single one of us.
I've gone Wrexham.
Oh, did you?
No, I haven't. Of course, I've not.
Yeah, of course.
Nah, I've gone Ipswich, mate. First of all, I am going to be a little bit pessimistic. So I do think there's two sides to us. I do look at Jack Clark, Shomodix, Chaplin, Philogene, Brody, Burns, Hurst, Kayust. I look at those sort of 8 to 10 players, and I do think the one thing they've had in common over the last season to 2 seasons is that they have spent a lot of time in the treatment room. They have not always been available. They have been missing for large patches of the season. Ogbene's another one, of course. They have been missing throughout the season. None of them have really been consistent. You can't rely on these players week in, week out. What I will say, though, is that if we get these players fit, should we be able to keep them at that level, I don't think there's a better starting 11 position for position within the championship. I don't think there's a better goalkeeper than Alex Palmer. I know I'm getting some hate off that one. I don't think there's a better left back than Leif Davis. I'm sorry, there isn't. The only partnership I think we can be beaten on is probably Clara Newman over Greaves O'Shea. I really like the Birmingham partnership at centre back. Ashley Young, for me, should be our starting right back. When Ben Johnson can't even deliver a throw in, well, his foot being off the ground, I think that sums up his performance on Friday night. I do have, Kayust for me is the best midfielder that the championship has ever seen. For me, it's as easy as that. There isn't a midfielder that compares to Jens Kayust, and the fact we've got him on loan for £870,000 is ridiculous.
Not even the likes of Onel Hernandez at Leeds or even Neves at Wolves, really.
Genuinely, I think he's the best midfielder we're going to see at this level, mate. I don't think there's a better midfielder, and I know I'm going to get so much. So I know I'm getting stick off that, but I want to do a bold prediction. I don't think there's a better midfielder.
Thank
than
God
Jens
people
Kayust.
can't comment on X. Well, I agree with you, but I know people are going to disagree.
And now you watch our viewer numbers just go.
Just drop. Absolutely plummet.
I do just worry a tad over that partnership, Kayust and Matasiwa. I do wonder if they're both the same sort of player. I think what worked for us well in the championship season with sort of Morsey Taylor or Morsey Luongo was that one of them was allowed to have the chains off them to go forward and to push into the final third. One of them would stay back. I don't see for me clearly which one is that, because Kayust, for me, is more of a defensive midfielder. Matasiwa looked very off the boil against Birmingham on Friday night. Natural, I guess, because the championship is a very intense league. So I think that is more than fair to give him a couple of games to settle in. And then you look at that front four, and I don't think there's a better front four in this division. When fit, Jack Clark on the left wing. Stop playing him at number 10. He is not a number 10. Play Jack Clark at left wing, Shomodix in the number 10, Ogbene on the right, and Hurst up front. There isn't a better front four. Okay, the only question mark that I have is over fitness and keeping everyone in the squad fit. Should we do that, we'll walk away with this league. Is it mad to say, you know what, I've done one prediction. Should I put another one in?
Go on, yeah.
Is it mad to say this is with the caveat that everyone stays fit? Everyone stays fit. I think we break Reading's points total.
Maybe. I mean, Reading still hold on to that record, so why do you think that?
I think the quality that we've got in, mate, I really do. I think, okay, we do need another striker. I don't think El Hamadi's up to championship standard. As much as I'm a big fan of the bloke, I don't think he's quite there. But then again, do we need a 20-goal season striker? Think of the goals that we've got in Jack Clark, Larson Hills in this division, Schmodix, Ogbene, Chaplin, Brody, who's still here at the moment, Wes Burns down the right-hand side. There's going to be players I've forgotten because we've simply got so much strength in depth in that sort of front three. I know it gets joked around a lot on Twitter. I can see 100 goals, 100 points. I really can. And I know people are going to clip that up and people are going to come back to me, sorry, motorbike outside. That just sums stuff up, don't it? I know that people are going to come back to me in a couple of months' time when we haven't won in 2 months and we barely score and I look like an absolute fool. But I genuinely think that Redden's point total is in danger if we can keep our players fit.
And for I'm not going to go into too much detail on this at all, but my first place pick is Southampton. And again, like Southampton, I think are in a similar position that Leicester are in, where perhaps they need a few more reinforcements. But I think they are such a good squad, they are such a good team that they're going to finish first. Just because I'm a very pessimistic Ipswich fan, and we never finished first in anything. When we got promoted 2 seasons ago, we finished second. When we got promoted from League One, we finished second as well. So Southampton, in my opinion, will finish top. But anyway, we've been going on for almost an hour and a half. I really appreciate everybody who's tuned in this evening. We have over 80 people in the chat, which I think for a first episode is absolutely brilliant. So thank you very much to everybody who's joined us. And it also gives me the opportunity to play this legendary soundbite. And of course, we will be having you on next week's edition of the Football League Weekly. So, Rhys, how does it feel to be back? And that went quite well.
Absolutely sensational, mate. It's genuinely, it feels so good to be back. If this is the first time that you have seen us, by the way, feel free to check out us on Over the Bar. We used to do an EFL show last season where we covered Championship, League One, League Two. This season, we're purely focused. Our pure focus is on the Championship. We may have some little special episodes, when big news breaks in other divisions, but we're going to be mainly about the Championship this season. Question for you though, Ben. I noticed in your top 6, you didn't have Sheffield United. I think that's outrageous, mate.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't rate Ruben Sellers, to be fair. I think he's a good manager, but I reckon he's going to struggle. I think they've got some very young players who are on loan as well. The likes of Louis Barry, who is always injured, always injured. And I simply think there are better teams than them, in my opinion. We'll discuss this in more detail once I actually come up with a logical rationale as to why they're not in my top 6 in the next couple of weeks. But that is all I can give you at the moment. Don't shoot the messenger.
Mate, brilliant. To be fair, I can hear there's going to be one Welsh fan, isn't there, in this 80-odd people that are asking about Wrexham. You know what? For me, I think Wrexham are in for a bit of a reality shock this season. I think any position, I've got them in 15th, but realistically, I think anywhere above the drop zone is a really good season for Wrexham this season. I do like Ryan Hardy. I think it's a good sign. I think he's consistent enough to be in a Championship team. Is he the sort of striker that's going to push you into the top half or push you into the top 6? Definitely not. But getting 10 goals last season in a struggling Plymouth team really shouldn't be overlooked, where in this Wrexham team, he's going to have should have a lot better service towards him. It is just a shame for the Welsh side that they have lost Kiefer Moore to a serious injury, which could put any momentum to a grinding halt. But I don't see Wrexham pushing into top 10 or anything like that. I've got them in 15th, and I think that's solid. Before we go, what's your... people know I've got a soft spot for Portsmouth. I've got him finishing just below Wrexham in 16th. I thought Callum Lang was really good this weekend. He was a real menace down the right-hand side against Oxford. I thought he was really good. I thought the goal that Portsmouth scored, it took a bit of luck, admittedly. It's a poor back pass from Brannigan. Bishop really should score, doesn't score, and then Sikage is there to knock in the rebound. It's a pretty simple goal in the end, and definitely gifted on the plate. But when I look at Portsmouth, I want to have them finishing high. I want to have them in my top 10, pushing for the top 6. But they're not quite there, are they? I think they're going to be a team that are a bit of a slow burn. I think under John Mousinho, they've got the right man. But it's for me, Portsmouth is just going to be a patient, slow rebuild.
Yeah, and it's just about building momentum as well. And again, they've got plenty of players who, like, are more than good enough to kind of like push them to maybe that playoff position. But again, Portsmouth simply need to get a bit of momentum behind them. Colby Bishop is back fit after the injury that he sustained last season. John Swift is an absolutely brilliant signing from West Brom. I was very surprised to actually see West Brom get rid of him. And they also got Yang Min Hyuk as well, who is a bit of a wonder kid, very highly rated in South Korea. If he can get his feet running on the ground, I think I've said that analogy correctly, he could be absolutely brilliant. But I'm hungry. It is 7:30. I've got my dinner just about arriving, so we are going to sign off. This might genuinely be one of the worst sign-offs in the history of podcasting sign-offs. But Rhys, save me. Where can people find you on social media?
So you find me on Twitter, just there at Rhys Curtis14.
And of course, you can find me on X at OTB_Benjamin. I need to change that soon as we are no longer part of Over the Bar. You can find us on Twitter at, simply type in the Championship Weekly podcast, and then we should come up as well. We will be on YouTube soon. I know some people have been a little disappointed that they haven't been able to get involved in the chat today, so we will be back on YouTube next week. We're simply waiting for YouTube to pull their fingers out their asses and allow us to live stream. And this podcast this evening will be hopefully on Spotify and all of those platforms as well. Fingers crossed. So we will be back next week. Thank you very much to everybody who's joined us tonight. We will have David joining us as well, who you all remember from Over the Bar 2, so we can't wait to get him involved a little bit more as well. And until then, we haven't got an outro this week, so I might as well use this as an outro.
Where are you? Let's be having you!
Thank you very much, and we will see you all next week.